All right. So, dearest ones, what shall we talk about today? Let's think whatever we're going to talk about, we're going to do it to look for some tools to use in our daily lives. One, to help us become more wise, less neurotic. Two, and more kind. What's my light doing there? It shouldn't be in the picture. Hang on. Oh, there you go. Lighting up Buddha, sort of. There we go, yes. Okay, so that's it. That's the plan, to develop the two wings of the bird. And yes, I haven't got a clue what to talk about. Let me think. Well, I think this is the basis of all the teachings, really. One way of saying the point of all the Buddha's teachings is, and it sounds almost so corny, it's like a joke. From one's own point of view, the simplest way of putting it, all the Buddha's practices, the Buddhist methodology, the simplest way is to help you get less neurotic, become less suffering and more happy. Hang on a second. Come in. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So how to get happy? I mean, it's, there are conferences on this. There are countless definitions, countless methods, countless discussions about what this means. And in the Buddhist sense, it's almost so simple. It's like, it's embarrassing, but it's really hard to hear. It's literally the method for the Buddha to get happy is to give up, one, harming others with your body and speech, and two, then give up attachment, anger, and all the other thousands of neuroses. That's it. Goodbye. That's the method. I can hang up now. I can go home. I've just told you. That's it. That's it. I'm not joking, but that is the method. So what's the logic to this? Because it's not meant to be simplistic or silly, but this is literally one way of putting it. This is the, if you like, this is the wisdom wing. The way Buddha puts it in Buddhist terms, coming from 2,500 years ago, this is the method for achieving your own liberation from suffering and its causes. That's exactly the words that Buddha uses. It's the method for achieving your own liberation from suffering and its causes. Well, it's another way of saying how to get happy. So this happiness, finally, that when Buddha says the term, when this is the wisdom wing, this is the complete wisdom wing practice. This is not including the compassion wing. This is the method for achieving your nirvana. Now, everybody on the planet's heard that word. And what it is literally referring to is, quote unquote, liberation from suffering and its causes. The Sanskrit word referring to that state of your mind when you have accomplished it is you have achieved your nirvana. This is literal. This is literally what the Buddha is saying. So, of course, we don't say, oh, I want to be free of suffering and its causes. We don't talk like that. We say we want to stop suffering. We say like that. And we say, I want to be happy. We say like that. Well, this is the Buddhist way of putting it. So, of course, the happiness that Buddha is referring to there, literally, the happiness that Buddha is referring to by the word achieving your nirvana, is like so insanely more advanced than what we would think. We'd laugh at it if we heard what you'd be capable of if you had that. But it's literally what it is. So, whatever level, so even if you think the simplest method, the simplest understanding of happiness for us would be when everything goes nicely. That's happiness, isn't it? I mean, maybe you'd like lots of money and a really nice house and a really happy mind. Well, no. We'd think, no. So, okay, first of all, we would think when we hear happiness, this is one of our biggest mistakes. We hear, when Buddha says happiness, at the simplest level, what he's referring to is a mind of a person that at least minimum has not much attachment, anger, jealousy, depression, pride, low self-esteem, etc. That's the simplest level. But a person who's really achieved this happiness he's talking about, this liberation from suffering and its causes, what he refers to as nirvana, then your mind would have no attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, etc., whatsoever. So what would it have instead? Well, as you've heard often enough, if you listen to me and you listen to the Buddhist teachings, you're hearing the Buddha says we've got the neurotic states of mind, but we have the positive ones. So the person who's achieved their own liberation from suffering and its causes in the radical level, the Buddha's referring to, there'd be no neuroses whatsoever. There'd be no neuroses whatsoever. And that sounds like science fiction for us, doesn't it? That sounds like impossibility, because the way we think of happiness in our world, and we think of a normal person has some love, some compassion, some anger, some jealousy, like that. We have a little bit of both. There's no concept in modern psychology or neuroscience that would posit the possibility that you can totally get free of attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, etc., etc. So that's where Buddha's more radical. But that's literally, so what he means when he says happiness, because the flip side of being free of suffering is being full of happiness, isn't it? There's another way of putting it. It's literally your mind that he's referring to, literally your mind that he's referring to, and you'll be no delusions. So what's left is only joy. This is something I could spend the rest of the day just talking now. This whole concept of, if we say the word joy, if we say the word very happy, happiness, I mean, you might use the word bliss, but we say it very sarcastically. Oh, I'm so blissful, we'll say. These are words that are referring to a mind of a person who doesn't have attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, etc., etc., etc. This is the whole point in Buddhism. It's really not complicated, but because it's so not how we talk, we just can't hear it. It sounds like weird, it just sounds so peculiar. But this is literally what Buddha has found to be possible, that each person that exists possesses just naturally the potential to be free of attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, etc., and therefore finally to be free of suffering, because they are not only the main cause of your suffering in terms of what you do on the basis of attachment and anger and jealousy and pride is you harm others. So this perpetuates further suffering in the future. But just the mind alone, when Buddha says suffering, he's referring to the mind mostly. And then when he says happiness, he's referring to the mind. So that implies the methodology, doesn't it? To work on your mind. How for you to get your happiness, for you to get your quote unquote liberation from or freedom from suffering and its causes. So in other words, happiness, joy, these words, whatever you want, the main cause of your having experiences of those, the main cause is not being negative, plus actively being positive. That's it, that's it. This is literal. And these are, we can hear it, that these words are not complicated. But because we don't use these concepts ourselves, they're not the methods we think of. And why? So the first problem is, this is the interesting point, when we say happiness, if I say to Alexis, tell me, oh, wow, you look so happy, Alexis, and she's smiling, let's say. I'll say, tell me about it. And we know very well that pretty much what she will do is describe an event or a person or a thing that happened or something she's got. And why would she say that? Because that, as far as Alexis is concerned, and the rest of us, in the world, normal people, happiness is what you get when you get what you want. We see it in external terms. This is natural, isn't it? When you tell me about your happiness, you'll describe your beautiful boyfriend. Tell me about your happiness, you'll describe the lovely picnic you had in the sun today. Tell me about your happiness, you'll describe the concert you went to. We will describe the event or the person. Because why? Because it's logical, because that's what we think is the cause of my happy feelings. So now, Buddha's not arguing with that totally. He doesn't disagree, if, say, your friend smiles at you, that smile doesn't play a role in your happy feeling. Definitely it does. But all he is saying is, we think it's the main cause of my happy feeling. And he says it's merely, and hear the words, please, it's merely a catalyst that triggers the potential in your mind to be happy. And that happiness in your mind, so in the long-term point of view, happiness in your mind, a happy feeling, is the result, and this is where karma comes in, is the result of your past virtue. Is the result of your past virtue. So basically every time, this is a bigger picture. The simplest, most evident one is the mind. Right now, if your mind only had kindness and love and compassion and generosity and forgiveness in it, then you'd naturally be happy. Just naturally. It will be impossible not to be happy, because they directly are the cause of happy feelings right this second. But the longer term cause of my capacity to even have a happy moment, a happy feeling based upon Alexis's smile at me, which is the mere trigger, is that I've got in my mind, like how they talk karmic seeds. I've been kind in the past that has left a seed in my mind, and then that seed is triggered as a happy feeling, triggered by Alexis's smile at me. This is literally both karmically in the long term, how you get happy feelings, and in the moment by moment experience of happy feelings. So one, the direct cause of a happy feeling is having a positive thought. And indeed we can all see, but doing also on the basis of that, doing a positive action. And long term, how come you've got any seeds at all in your mind at all to even be happy is because of being past virtuous actions. Because as you know, with karma, the Buddhist view is everything we think and do and say programs our mind. It's the basic, simplest way to put it. Put seeds in our mind. This is the explanation of Buddhist view of karma and then the mind itself. So we think, because we don't have a view of karma, we have a view that mummy made us, daddy made us, or God made us, first of all. And second, in other words, we don't have any sense of our own past. There's no view like that. That's where Buddha is quite radical in asserting this view about karma, that we come into this life programmed with our own tendencies, not mummies and daddies, not coming from God or creator. We produce ourselves. We come fully programmed from the second of conception in our mother's womb, programmed with our own tendencies. So if you've practiced bucket loads of virtue and kindness and goodness and lived in vows of morality and lots of not killing and not stealing and not lying and not harming, you'll wake up in this life, one, with a really healthy human body, and two, lots of good conditions and a really trained, disciplined, content mind. This is the purpose of Buddhist practice. This is the wisdom wing. No mention of the compassion wing yet. But it's so there, and so the words are easy, as you can see, but the doing of this is immensely difficult only because we're addicted to the wrong methods. We are addicted to believing that the external event is the main cause of my suffering, the main cause of my happiness, and indeed my suffering. We're addicted to that, and that's the method we follow. And all Buddha is saying is that method is just going to increase your suffering. It's literally mistaken. He's not being moralistic and saying you're naughty. He just says you've got the wrong method. So it's really hard because it's a habit, that's all. In its nature, it's not difficult. To have a positive thought sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it? But the reason it's hard to do that is because we're not confident and we have to practice it, and our tendencies necessarily aren't that. And second, we really do believe that the happiness is the direct result of the cake, the boyfriend, the smile, the nice weather. This is why it's difficult to practice this. In its nature, it's not complicated, but because we have completely different set of methods, that's why it's difficult. So that's why I've got to think about it. Try and be logical. I mean, it's not that, I don't think it's difficult to prove. You've got to give it a bit of time to prove that your negative thoughts make you miserable. I think that, no, you don't have to take time. That's instant. It might take you time to notice that you're happy as a result of being kind and loving and generous, but it's instant proof, I think, if you look in your mind. and you see extra strong levels of a depression or anger or jealousy, it's really evident that you're miserable. But again, we make it complicated because we're convinced I'm depressed because of an event. I'm angry because of the boyfriend. I'm jealous because of, what my sister did. So our analysis makes it more complicated. Buddha says our analysis is mistaken. So we've got to check, But just to see that second you're miserable when you're depressed, you're miserable when you're angry. I mean, try to forget about the boyfriend. Just the feeling itself alone right there is intense misery. This is what Buddha's saying. Still got to think about it. I mean, he might be wrong. We'll find out, isn't it? Not just believe him blindly. And that's the point here. Merely believing what he says won't help you. You've got to try it out and prove it, That's the point. So, of course, this means if you think that your suffering feelings at this moment come from the depression or the anger or jealousy, and then your happy feelings maybe come from the love and the kindness and the generosity, you've got to know how to distinguish in your own mind the difference between them. And that's also difficult because we have 1,000 thoughts a second and we can't see the difference. We just have this big lump of emotions inside us. We don't even pay attention and don't even notice these thoughts until they're kind of raging, So that makes it difficult as well. But this is the job. This is the job of being a Buddhist. You can also say it's a job of anybody, if you like. Buddha doesn't own this stuff. Buddha hasn't got copyright on it. Buddha didn't create all this. He's not a creator. He's just observed it. He is telling us his observation. That's all. And it's up to us to check it out. You can get the recipe from a cake from somebody. You check it out, you check it out. Same here. Yeah. So, of course, the karmic one, that's impossible to see immediately. You need to have clairvoyance. You need to be able to see the past, to see that. And Buddha indeed says you can eventually, because the whole point about the mind in Buddhism is that your consciousness isn't physical, is not the handiwork of a creator, didn't come out of nothing, and didn't come from your mummy and daddy. This is a major one. And it's a shock, of course, because all the psychology and neuroscience in our culture prevails completely as a view, as a truth. So it sounds shocking to hear that your mummy and daddy did not give you anger and jealousy and depression and low self-esteem. And that's really got to be thought through. And you take that as your hypothesis because you can't prove that immediately. You can prove your mother and father gave you a body. That's evident. You watch the process in the womb for 9 months after the egg and sperm come together. You can prove all that. You watch the person growing inside the womb. You watch the body come out. That can be proved pretty easily. But the major difference, of course, is the Buddha's saying that your mind is not physical. Your consciousness is not physical. And as we know, of course, mind and consciousness refer to the same thing in Buddhism. Your capacity for cognition, your feelings, your thoughts, your anger, your love, your compassion, your kindness, your tendency to be good at football, your tendency to be good at music. These are mental states. They're part of your mind. And you brought your tendencies with you from a past life. This is what Buddha is saying. So, of course, this view's been around for several thousand years, just that it's new for us in the West, and we think it's superstitious nonsense, because it doesn't fit with our model. So it's only really now more and more that people, the modern thinkers, are looking seriously at the Indian thinking, the incredible body of knowledge from India, not just from the Buddha, but before the Buddha, about all these things. It's been a living and, incredible system for several thousand years. So it's worth looking at. But the assumption of this, of course, the assumption is hugely different. It's obvious if you think that your mother and father are the main cause of you. It's logical. But you look back to them to find the source of your anger, jealousy, and depression, and you're being good at football. It's logical. So the Buddha's not arguing that mummy might not. I mean, in my case, I always use the example, my mother was a musician. And she saw her little Bobsy, me, and could see that I had potential. So she taught me music. So the usual way we'd say it is, oh, Robina's good at music because she's got her mother's genes. Well, she has her mother's genes, yes. But that's not where the tendency to be good at music is. That's not for the Buddha. The Buddhist way of saying it is, my mummy was good at music because she had a tendency in her mind from having done something like that before, and she came into this life with that tendency. And then she saw her little Bobsy had that tendency. So I was good at music because I had practiced something like that before. And then we very conveniently come together, and my mother taught me music. She didn't give me music. I had the tendency in my mind to be good at music, and she nourished that tendency by teaching me. In other words, if I didn't have the tendency to be good at music, she could teach me till the cows come home. I'd never learn music. You have to have the tendency. This is a major point in Buddhist psychology. Anger, the same. My boyfriend did punch me. You can't argue. You saw it. So we naturally assume that is the main cause of my anger. It feels like that. It looks like that to everybody, but that's not true, Buddha says. Yes, indeed, your boyfriend punched you, but the main cause of my anger is the tendency in my mind to be angry, just like that tendency to be good at music. The boyfriend's action of punching nourished the karmic tendency I had to be angry, and my mother's teaching me music nourished the tendency in my mind to be good at music. So that's why Buddha always says everything finally comes from our mind, you know. So you've got to just think these things through, because it's a different analysis from the materialist model. You can't just say, oh yeah, Buddha says this. You've got to understand what he's saying and speak the words out to ourselves, articulate it, and then start to take it as our hypothesis. And then obviously the practice you do is dependent upon this assumption, isn't it? So then this is so hard. I mean, people have been Buddhists 50 years. If someone punches them in the nose, the first instinct is to believe the person's punch is the main cause of their suffering. I mean, to get to the point where you've trained your mind so stably with such discipline for so many years that when the bad thing happens, you don't immediately point the finger, that's advanced. But that's possible. That's possible, totally possible. It's up to us, you know, to work on the practice. This is Buddha's practice. This is Buddha's teachings. This is Buddha's analysis of the mind and how things work and what happiness and suffering is. So clearly also you can say that suffering first and foremost is in the mind. Happiness first and foremost is in the mind. So its main causes therefore have to be in the mind. But we can also see that we experience suffering and happiness in the external world as well. In other words, using the karmic view, one, you're born into this life with positive tendencies to be kind and patient and loving because you've practiced those. Therefore, you have a tendency to be happy and content. But also because of your past actions, because of your generosity, let's say, you're born into a family where they have lots of money. So you're able to get what you want very easily. You get the beautiful food, you get the lovely house, the nice weather, the good schools. All is that triggers the happy feelings. But if you really understand the karmic view, you're not fooled by them all. You just know it's the fruit of your virtue. You're delighted with it, but you don't grasp at it everything and think, oh, aren't I lucky? I'm so rich and famous, or I'm so rich and happy. It's because, whatever reason. You know it's due to your past karma. So then you use it for you to help you develop as a human being. And of course, if you're going to practice the compassion wing, the only reason to have wonderful things is to use it to benefit others. There's only so many beautiful houses and money we need, isn't there? So when you have the compassion wing, then you use that money and use those resources to help others. That's the compassion wing, So both your happiness results as getting money, your past virtue of generosity results in having money, for example, and your past being kind results in you having a happy mind now. So you get the best of both worlds. And then knowing it's the result of karma, you're not attached to it. You're not greedy for it. You don't have this hubris of thinking, oh, aren't I fortunate? Aren't I lucky? You know why you've got it, because of your own past practice. And then because you don't need it yourself, you don't need so much money you can use, you use it to help others. That's where the compassion wing comes in. I mean, for yourself, you just need a simple little house and have a happy mind, and that's it, be content. But if you want to be beneficial to others, it's wonderful to have money, wonderful to have resources. We can see the world doesn't, not a single, nobody can do anything to help others if you don't have money. Money is just the resource that we use to help others. So if you've got it and you have, you want to use it to help others, that's amazing. Then you have a really appropriate view of your life, So your happiness and suffering, positive actions don't just ripen in the mind. They also ripen externally, because we take lives and we have bodies. So for example, non-killing causes you to get a human life. Non-killing causes you to get a healthy human life. Non-killing causes you to live your life without being harmed by others. Non-killing causes you to have a really delicious environment and to eat food that nourishes you. They're all the results of non-killing. So all our actions have many types of results, but they start with the mind. Everything starts with the mind, This is the Buddhist view. Okay, ask me some questions now. Come on. I've chatted for half an hour. Must be plenty of food for thought there. Come on, people. Is that a hand? Yes, good on you, Zalo, go.
Hello, Venerable Robina.
Hello, sweetheart.
Thank you very much for your teachings.
Sure.
I've got a question about karma.
Yes.
So if someone has a lot of money, we can deduce that that person has been very generous, right?
That's right. Yes, exactly.
So shouldn't it follow that that person should also have the tendency to be very generous?
I know you'd hope so, wouldn't you? But we can see the evidence that it's just not true, isn't it? So let's look at that. Let's look at that, shall we?
Yes.
Okay. This is the tragedy. So there are 4 ways in any one lifetime. There are 4 ways that our karma will ripen. So let's say that one person, first of all, they've got a human body. That's the fruit of non-killing. Second, okay, so non-killing, for example, might be the cause of that person getting a human body. And so that's going to ripen in 4 ways. That non-killing specifically will ripen in 4 ways, but they mightn't all ripen in that person's life. But the 4 results of conscious, intentional non-killing, or especially non-killing practiced in the framework of living in vows of non-killing, the 4 results for that one person would be: 1, they'd have a human life; 2, they would have the tendency to keep not killing. This is the major one, and that comes from living in vows of non-killing. You with me so far? Yep. 3, they would not get killed or die young. And 4, environmental karma, they would be healthy and eat, and whatever they eat nourishes them. So they're the 4 karmic results of, say, for example, non-killing. Now, let's say that person also has lived in vows of not stealing and has also practiced generosity in the past. So that person will come into this life with a healthy body, have a tendency to not steal, and will even also have a tendency to be, as a result of not stealing and as a result of generosity in the past, they will have the kind of karma called experiences similar to the cause, and they will have lots of money and a lovely home and a rich family, or even just have what you need. They will have the experience similar to the cause of past generosity. One of them is to have those resources, but the other one, which is crucial, is to also have the tendency to be generous. But not everybody has both together. That's pretty clear. You can have a person who is born as a human, but has the experience similar to the cause, the 3rd kind of karma, of being very poor. But they've got a tendency to be generous. We can see that. And then you can have another person who, as a result of generosity, is very rich, but it doesn't ripen as a tendency, so they're very miserly and greedy. Are you with me? So there's a karma
Yes, so
called tendency to keep doing it, and there's another karma called the experience of have it happening to you. And not everybody has all of them because you haven't completed all the causes. Go on.
right, so they will ripen, but not necessarily at the same time.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing is, okay, whatever ripens is what you sowed, the seeds you sowed. So maybe for one person, you know, generosity from a long time ago ripens as having lots of money, but they don't have access to the seed that would also ripen as a tendency because maybe they haven't lived in vows. Maybe they've stolen a lot. And so that prevents them from wanting to give, things like that. I mean, it's quite complex. All the seeds, you've got to have a whole bunch, you've got to make sure you have all the conditions in place and all the right nourishment for all the seeds so that you, 1, are generous, 2, have money, and 3, all works perfectly. You've got to have a lot of things in place. And that's really where we have to understand karma very well, because we know if we're going to get born a human and you want to be useful to the world, you want to be generous and you want to have the resources. I mean, it's a magical combination because if we look at the world, so many, I mean, you don't meet many people who are rich who are generous. You just do. It's just so tragic. And then they have lots of attachment. And because they don't understand karma, there's lots of hubris. Oh, aren't I lucky? Or I've got all this money because I worked so hard. No, it's just that they've got this money because their generosity karma is ripening. But then they're being mean and miserly in this life. Absolutely finished. It's complete. I mean, that's why many people run out of money in this life because they haven't continued to be generous. The karma can finish, you know. Do you understand?
Yeah, right. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. In fact, the way Lama Zopa puts it, this is Buddha's teaching, the 2 main karmas we need, one, in order just to get a human body, but not just that, but to have a decent environment and a decent life with reasonable resources, born to a good family with proper conditions so we can practice our spiritual path, is non-killing gives you the human body, and generosity, conscious, intentional giving. That's the cause of our being. Any one of us in this human life right now who's got reasonable conditions and got a family, a home, an education, access to money fairly easily, unlike the majority of humans, is because of generosity. You can be born healthy, but born in a desert where you have to work 18 hours a day for a bowl of rice. That's not just the stealing. That's not just the result of stealing. It's the result of not being generous. So whether we're rich or poor, we need to practice generosity. To wanting to give to others is a huge practice. So important. You understand? Good, Zala. Okay, good, Zala. Thanks. Anybody?
Yeah, thank you very much.
So in other words, the point about karma is that because we are in charge of the process, then obviously if you're a gardener and you're in charge of what grows in your garden, you absolutely have to learn botany. It's not just potluck. We know that when it comes to the world, but we're so superstitious when it comes to so-called spiritual things. We don't think it's reasonable, you know. We just think it's good luck that we're born rich, or good luck that we get or we think, oh, the universe is kind to me, we'll say. Rubbish, Buddha says. It's even saying the universe is kind to me is like saying God is kind to me. And I'm not being critical about this view, but Buddha does not talk about a creator. There's no secret kind of thing out there that does good things to you. The universe doesn't pay back anything to you. You pay back yourself. You are the boss. This is a really powerful point in Buddhism. I mean, the way Buddhism describes it in the Indian and the Tibetan text, they don't talk like this. They don't say you're the boss, but we get the point. There's a modern way of talking it. So we have to know the causes. If you know that if you know your mind continues in a next life, Buddha says it will, then you might as well make sure you get the right conditions. So you want a decent human life again? Don't kill, please. Live in vows of not killing. If you want to have really good conditions, don't steal and be generous. If you want people to be kind to you, don't lie, don't steal, don't harm others. It's sort of logical. Then guaranteed you'll wake up next life with a decent human mummy in a good environment where you have access to more spiritual teachings, and you'll have all the conditions you need to keep on moving on your spiritual path. It's really quite practical and it's very simple, but we've got to think of it like this. Because the tendency that's very strong, which is a function of ego, is that somehow happiness and suffering kind of happen to us by luck. it's good luck and bad luck. We really believe there's something out there that does it to us. This is one of the main functions, Buddha says, of the way ego works. It's completely superstition. We are the main cause of our happiness and suffering. We are in charge. When we begin to get this, it's very profound. It makes us much more powerful, much more confident, much more grown up in a way, you know, much less fearful. We are the boss. So you better learn the rules. You better learn botany so you get a decent garden in the future life. We know that. You can't just sit there and think the universe will give you a nice garden in the future. That's superstition. You've got to know the rules, know the laws. It's not complicated, really. Of course, it's hard to believe it, quote unquote, because we can't see it directly. This is quite subtle. But eventually, Buddha says all the methods are there. When you get single-pointed concentration, you get clairvoyance. You're able to access a subtle level of your mind, and you can see the past and the future and the minds of others. This is all part of the Buddhist approach. It's nothing cosmic. So all the methods are there for us, you know. What else, sweethearts?
Venerable Robina, I had a question in the chat. It was a while ago, and I think some of it you had answered, but I'm going to read the whole thing to you.
Good, thank you.
It says, can you speak about the two wings of the bird, wisdom and compassion, mind and emotions of each, and where I might be able to read or watch more in depth?
Well, it's just there's a saying, but I quote it all the time. You might have noticed I'm saying it repeatedly because it's such a helpful way of framing all the Buddha's teachings. So all the Buddha's teachings are all there that describe these different stages of practice. First the wisdom wing and then the compassion wing. But I say it in such a way that you won't read it like that in the teaching. So you might be puzzled, you know. But I mean, the first level of practice is the very first level of practice. All the Buddhist teachings are this, especially the Tibetan tradition called the Lam Rim, which is a presentation. And it's very traditional, very Tibetan, very Indian. So it's not, it's not talking in a modern way, and it's got lots of other things in it. But if you summarize it, the essence of the wisdom wing is the work you do on yourself to put yourself together, as I said at the very beginning, to lessen your own suffering. And that's all the teachings on the very first level. They refer to it as abiding by the laws of karma, which means abide by the laws of morality. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't harm, don't this, don't that. Don't harm sentient beings. So the logic for this in Buddhism is because that everything we think and do and say sows seeds in our mind that produces our future. So the very first level of practice is, do I want to be harmed in the future? Do I want to be born in an unhappy life? Do I want to be mean and miserly and greedy and ugly and have people dislike me and harm me and kill me? No, thank you. I do not want that. So conclusion, Buddha says, well, honey child, don't create the causes. Don't kill. Don't steal, don't lie. Program your mind with those tendencies. That alone will give you another decent human life. That's the very first level of practice. Then the next level of practice, once you've begun to harness your body and speech, you now are able, because you've got more space, to look into your mind and to see the delusions and distinguish attachment and anger and fears from the virtues, the goodness, the compassion, the kindness. This is the hard work. And now you start to work on your mind and you lessen the neuroses and you try to change the jealous. I mean, this is really hard work. I mean, this demands immense effort to begin to be in charge of your mind. The words are easy. This is the wisdom wing. So like I said at the very beginning of the teachings, this is the methods that help you achieve your nirvana, which means help you get out of suffering and its causes. This is the words for it. All those practices, the typical teachings we hear about Buddhism: live in vows, don't do this, meditate, look at your mind, give up attachment, give up anger. That's all those teachings. Then you've got, on the basis of success at that, you're able to look around the world now and you go, oh my God, we're in the same boat. Then you go, what can I do to help others? I know the methods now to how to get happy and not suffer. So now I want to help others. And that's the compassion wing. That's the bodhisattva path. That's the Mahayana teachings, all very extensive. So that's the essence of it. It's the entire Buddhist path. And any books you're going to find on Buddhism will be in one or other of these topics. Some very extensive, some much more intellectual, some more simple. But this is the essence of the Buddhist approach to life, all contained in this way of putting, you know. So, I mean, start with the books. It's good to come to courses, and you always learn something at courses. That's always good to go. And then there's reading material, and you start with one book, like say by the Dalai Lama, an overview of this entire path. And then you go from there, you know, you go to the next one, then the next one, and you map your own way through it. That's my answer. I hope that's helpful. What else is there, Alexis? Something else
I
there.
have a request for you to sing the blessing prayer for offering food so someone can record it.
Okay. I'll do that now. Well, there's a little meditation that goes with it, so it can be very short or very long. I'll do it short. So just pretend we've got our cup of tea or our lunch or our dinner. It's in front of us. So we think, there's many ways to think, but a simple way to think is, well, this is the fruit of the work of many sentient beings. People grew these vegetables, little animals died for this, say it's meat there. You think of the sentient beings who made it, you think of the creatures who died even for the rice or the veggies, and you think I'm going to eat this food so I can be healthy, so I can be a benefit to others. But then also we can also bless it with the energy of the Buddhas, if you like. So we just imagine this food has got no intrinsic nature whatsoever. And we imagine the energy of the enlightened body, speech, and mind of all the Buddhas, Om Ah Hong, these 3 Sanskrit syllables, melts into the food and makes it delicious nectar. And then we imagine, we blessed it with this Om Ah Hong, Om Ah Hong, Om Ah Hong. Now we've got this delicious nectar, completely blessed. And now we will offer it, thinking this way. So we think of all the Buddhas and all the Bodhisattvas and all the suffering sentient beings all together. And then we imagine them experiencing the joy of receiving this delicious nectar. Lama Sangye Lama Chödejin Lama Gedonte Kungi Jepo Lama Yin Lama Namla Chöpabul. And then as Lama Zopa says, once you've done that, the bigger your stomach, the better. That's it. Short version.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. What else, sweetie pies?
Venerable Masha,
Yes.
Masha has her hand up.
Masha, good sweetheart. You're up a bit late, darling girl. What are you doing? Look at you.
The clock changed today
It's true,
here.
isn't it? It's true. It's
Yeah.
Okay, go on. Talk to me, darling.
Is it possible for an animal to get a human body, to reborn in a human body?
Sweetheart, the Buddha would say we've all had countless lifetimes, some of the worst sufferings, including animals. So clearly, if you're a human now, then by definition, of course, animals can become humans, and humans become animals. Absolutely. So of course, but it's not much you can do as an animal to create the cause to be born a human. You have to rely upon the karmic seeds from your past human lives, where you've left seeds in your mind for those to ripen at the end of your death as an animal. And that's why, one of the major things to do is to help animals die well by saying prayers in their ear, by saying mantras, because that can help trigger one of their human karmic seeds from maybe 100,000 or 50 or 100 lives ago. Of course, yes. But as an animal, you can't do much because you don't have much volition. You don't have much clarity. You don't have much ability to change your mind and to have positive thoughts. You can't do that. So we can help animals, though, get a human life by helping them die peacefully and saying prayers, like I said, saying mantras in their ear and things like that when they die. Does that make sense, Masha?
Yeah, that's why I asked, because I was wondering if you then can do something as a human being. But you already answered.
That's the main thing, because they can't do much themselves. So that's why it's so important when your little animal is dying. Like I got a friend in Australia who's got many guinea pigs, and they get old. She does prayers for hours. She has tapes on. She says prayers to them. There's so many things you can do to help animals. Absolutely, so many things you can do to help animals die really well. So it helps trigger one of their virtuous karmic seeds. So the Buddhist view would be, so they get a human life in the future. Then they can practice a spiritual path and like that. Absolutely, Masha.
Okay.
Thank you, sweetheart. Yes, Salo.
Yes, I've got this question. Have you ever heard a teaching about, or what do you think? Do you think Buddhist teachings imply anything about politics?
Well, let's analyze it, Zalo. I mean, politics is the compassion wing, isn't it? Think about it. Politics is people who want to help the world, ideally. Of course, that's the compassion work. You see the world is suffering and you decide you want to do something about it to help. Of course, that's politics. That's working for companies that help people, whatever you want to call it. Of course, that's compassion wing, isn't it? Ideally, that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, right. But does it imply any, I mean, could you say, like, based on Buddhist teachings, this is the system that would work better or something like that?
Well, of course, because it's based in good ethics. So any political activity we do, or any work we do at all, whether it's for a big NGO or for some little company, whatever, it must be something we do that doesn't harm sentient beings and certainly helps them. So we got to really, I mean, ethics is at the base of all of the Buddha's teachings from A to Z. Good ethics, do actions that don't harm others. So if you're working in a kitchen, you know, I mean, this is where you're cooking. I mean, whether it's politics, anything you do to help others, it has to actually help them and not harm others, which is quite difficult to find. Because I mean, the sadness of the universe is even if you are the purest vegan on the planet, you're not killing any creatures to eat their food, eat their flesh, but thus by eating vegetables, billions of creatures die. So we've got to accept that reality, but be conscious of it. So we do everything we can to not harm others and to help. That's the compassion wing, honey. That's the evident conclusion. It's obvious once you put ethics in it. Do you understand me?
Yep. Thank you.
Good. Okay. What else, people? Yes. Christine, talk to me.
Hello, hello, Venerable. Good evening. How are you?
Very well. Thank you. I hope you're doing well as well.
Thank you.
Yes, darling.
In some respects, I am beginning over again from scratch.
I didn't hear that. What did you just said, darling? I didn't hear it. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I said for some respects, I am beginning over again from scratch.
Okay.
There was an organization that I was involved with that had inappropriate interactions, and I have separated myself from that.
Okay. Yes.
And I am on this path now here with you.
Yes.
And so I find myself trying to grasp everything that I can like it's oxygen.
Yes, darling.
But I think one of the things that would be so helpful is to understand where exactly do you, even if you're relearning, what is the best place to simply start?
I understand. I mean, first of all, what's implied by what you're saying and what I can pick up from what you're saying is you've been on a spiritual path. You've learned some of the things you're hearing, I'm sure, are familiar to you. That's why you said you're starting from scratch. And it's very wise to leave an organization if you find it's not appropriate. You know, it's not ethical behavior. That's really intelligent. So I think if you're wanting to, you know, it's a bit like if you've maybe, you know, you hear about yoga. And that we all know there are 47 varieties of yoga. So maybe you've gone deep into one system of yoga and then you decide you want to leave that organization. You've got to start from scratch. Then you start another system. I mean, let me give the example. Actually, I did martial arts at one point. It was, you know, karate. And then I remember a couple of years learning this one system when I was in New York in the mid-70s. And it was one particular system of karate. And I learned for a couple of years. And then I went back to Australia. And then the teacher I got in the new dojo saw that I hadn't learned properly. I didn't check the teacher. It was a very good example for me. I didn't select the teacher properly. So I learned completely wrongly. So I had to start from scratch. So I remember, first of all, when he said, because when I came to the new club and I said, I've got a brown belt or whatever I had. And he, at the end of the class, he was very direct and very kind. He said, I'm very sorry, Robina, but you really have to go back to the basics. You've got to go back to the white belts because you really have learned wrongly. So first I was really insulted and felt very proud. Then I thought about it and I realized I'd chosen the wrong teacher. I'd chosen the wrong club. So I knew much of the stuff, but I had to have the humility to go back to basics. So go back to the white belts and start again. So that's really my answer to you. So if you like what you're hearing in this organization or these classes, whatever, you just start where you can. You're already doing that by listening. Maybe you go to other classes. Maybe you do one of the courses that is, more structured, like takes a month or something, and you learn more things. So if you like the Buddhist approach, you start going into the more Buddhist approach to it, learning, you'll find your way eventually, and maybe some of it you'll pick up quickly because you've done some of the work already. But that's where you've got to do your checking and thinking and making sure you're in the right place. And you just you'll pick it up. You'll pick it up as you go along. And I mean, the system that I'm in the Tibetan Buddhist one, is quite structured. There are classes and courses that you do first, and you do the next, and you do the next, and you go on from there, So it seems to me you're in the right place doing the right thing. So just keep moving, keep coming to classes, start to read some things, and it'll gradually start to make sense, and you'll follow the steps. What do you think, Christine? Does that make sense, darling?
Absolutely, it does. Thank you very much,
Just
Venerable.
keep moving, sweetheart. Just keep using your common sense, using your heart, but all your common sense as well. Check up, don't just, learn from your experiences, and just keep moving and see where it takes you, sweetheart.
Thank you very much, Venerable.
All right. Thank you, Christine. A few minutes to go, darlings. What else is there? Anything in particular to discuss? So maybe conclude, there's happiness and suffering. It almost seems so simple. And this is the first level of practice in Buddhism, to start to realize, yes, the external world plays a major role in our suffering and our happiness. But this extra component that Buddha really is articulate about, and this is his expertise from his own direct experience, that what goes on in your mind is the main cause. So this is why we have to learn about the mind and learn the meditation techniques, so we can develop these very skillful techniques that are, to help us see our mind better. And then we have to have lots of humility and patience and go one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. That's the key to success. Anything else? Any further questions? Come on, anybody, just something. Huh? Nothing. Well, I could cheat you of 5 minutes and leave. I always do that these days. I'm very naughty. So is everybody okay? How are you, Rosanna? How's everything, and how's all your work going? You doing well, darling?
Tremendous, tremendous. I just sent you tonight. We're having a big event tomorrow for donations.
Yes.
We've got about 1,000 books coming in, and we've got groceries for 400 and some children.
Amazing.
Yes, it's really good.
I'm so glad, Rosanna. I'll have a look. I'll check it out.
And
so happy
you'll be in our heart. You'll be in our heart.
Thank you, Rosanna.
Yes, thank you.
Darling, thank you, thank you. Who else is there here? Brian in LA. How's LA, Brian? Are you working your way still? You work for, who do you work for? British Airways or American?
American.
So all these cancelled flights, I've heard. What's going on?
Yeah, I know. I wish they'd cancelled mine because I have
to. You weren't lucky enough to get cancelled.
No.
What's happening? They're short of staff or what?
Yeah, they're short of employees, and a lot of people are calling out sick because we've had a lot of incidents in the past couple of weeks. Just recently, a flight attendant 2 days ago was punched in the face by a first-class passenger. So people are a lot of my colleagues are just scared to go to work. So there's a high rate of sick calls.
My God.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't mention that in the news reports.
No, they don't. Actually, I had a quick question I was going to ask you at the beginning. So you wake up in the morning, you've had a good night's sleep, and you do your practice, you do your meditation, you do your readings, everything's wonderful, you feel good. And I know you have a lot of subscriptions, you read all the newspapers and everything.
Yeah.
I don't want to become that person that doesn't want to read anything because
I understand.
And I know it's a work in progress. How do you stop yourself from reacting to what you're reading? Because it is intense.
It is intense, Brian. I totally agree. And this is a really powerful question. This is where the compassion wing comes in, sweetheart. So it's a bit like you're because here we are on the Buddhist path, and we're doing the 2 wings of the bird. We want the wisdom wing. We want to be happy. We want our own life to be good, which is your own stuff. But you also want to be useful to others. Would you agree you want to be useful to the world, Brian? Would you agree with that? You want to be useful to the
absolutely,
world.
absolutely.
You want to be useful. So this is the point. That means that's called, when you're really advanced, that's called a bodhisattva. You're on the way to becoming a Buddha. Your job description is to be useful to the world. So obviously, to be useful, you've got to, if you're so overwhelmed by your own daily suffering, and you can't even be kind to a dog. So then if you're at that place, if you're in a state where you're really struggling mentally, where the world is too much for you, you really do leave the world alone. You're not ready for it yet. You're too fragile. Put it like that. It's a good way to put it. But if you've got some stability and you've got some confidence in these methods that you're using to help you, and then you have some confidence maybe in the view of karma, then when you do read and see the world and hear about the latest colleague who's been suffering or whatever, then because you understand, this is where karma comes in, Brian, and this takes us time to have confidence in. You feel, when you know why it's happening, and then you think, I'm not yet fully qualified to help everybody. I can't even hardly help a dog yet, but I want to keep trying to help others. So it becomes grist for your mill. So once you've read about it, you understand karma, you understand the crazy world, all the crazy people doing things to harm others, all the people suffering, and it should increase your compassion and increase your wish to, okay, I'm just going to keep moving and do what I can to help one sentient being at a time, or to help more. So you use it to give you courage to help others. And then, you do what you can. Like Rosanna with her little project, she raises money, she gets food for poor people and books for the kids. So you rejoice in the little bit that you can do. Rosanna's little bit of job, or your job, how helping people, the tiny bit you do, you've got to rejoice that you've helped one person, 6 people, 20 people. And it's not the whole world, but you do what you can according to your capacity, and you delight in that, and you just keep moving. You don't get hopeless. It's not easy, but you just keep moving, because what else can we do except do what we can? The more you work on yourself, the more content you become, the more you look at the world, the more it energizes your compassion, Brian. And then you go, I've got to do what I can. Add one little pit to the world, That's the attitude, sweetheart.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yes.
You've got to have patience and long-term patience, because it's not going to change all overnight. And this is where, when you understand attachment, Brian, attachment in this for everybody's the same. We want everything to be lovely. So if you're really a lot of attachment for things to be lovely, then the world will make you very distressed. But if you haven't got so much attachment and grasping, and it doesn't scare you, you become more courageous. And then when you're in the midst of some chaos and you're the one person who's still smiling, and you reach out to one human being and help them, then you've done some good in the day. So do your best to be kind to others, whatever it is in crazy old LA, and then that's helping other people. That's the compassion wing. And then you get satisfied. Look at Rosanna. She's happy because she's doing some good. Only in one tiny corner, but she's doing some good. So all of us the same like that. And you get happy from it, and you do what you can, one step at a time. Do you understand?
Yes.
It's a really good way to finish. Thank you, sweetheart.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Perfect, everybody. So keep going, darlings. Much love, and never give up. Everybody, never give up. Never give up. That's the key to success. And be perky. I always figure my policy is, even if you're drowning, you might as well stay perky, because otherwise, everything's chaos. If you stay perky, you might find some method to get out. But if you start panicking, that's the end of it. It's not easy to say it, but we need to be enthusiastic. Have enthusiasm. That catches. Then you give that to one person, Brian, you've helped one person. All right, you understand? Good, darlings. Much love. Goodbye. Never give up.
Thank you so much.